Have you ever really stopped and thought about how we decide what's important? I mean, really important. It's a question that, believe it or not, shapes pretty much everything around us, from the laws that get passed to how a company knows it's succeeding, and yeah, even how we think about our own social lives. We are literally surrounded by scorecards, and these systems, they quietly define our reality, telling us what and who really matters.
So, in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on these scorecards. We'll start with the big idea, why measurement is so powerful in the first place. Then we'll look at the societal ledger, how governments decide what's valuable. From there, we'll jump to the world of business scorecards, then explore how our online friendships get measured. And finally, see what happens when all these different systems just crash into each other. And that will all lead us to the big one. Are we even measuring the right things? All right, so let's dive right into section 1, measuring what matters. This is the foundation that everything else we're going to talk about is built on.
I mean, it seems like a pretty simple question, right? But the answer, well, it has consequences that ripple through every single part of our lives. Because the truth is, the answer isn't in what we say is important, it's in what we choose to measure. And there it is. This is the single most important idea to get your head around. What gets measured gets valued. The moment you put a number on something, you elevate it. You're signaling that this metric, this specific thing, is worth our attention, our money, our effort. So, keep this idea in your back pocket, because it's the thread that connects everything we're about to explore. So let's start at the very top, with society itself. I want you to think of a country's laws and its government spending as a kind of societal ledger. It's like a giant collective scorecard of what we all agree is valuable. And the very first things written on this ledger are what we call public goods. When a government decides to use our tax money to fund schools or police or roads, it's making a huge statement. It's officially measuring these things and saying, yep, these services are valuable enough for every single one of us to chip in for. But here's where this whole ledger idea gets really interesting. It's not just about what we decide to value, it's about who. Because for a huge chunk of history, the promise of these public goods, and even the basic measure of being a citizen, well, it just didn't apply to everybody. And this timeline, wow, it just lays it all out, doesn't it? It shows that the fight for civil rights is, at its very core, a fight to be officially measured and counted by society. Every single one of these moments was a point where the definition of who matters got a little bit wider, when another group of people was finally added to that ledger of full citizenship and rights. I mean, this quote just drives the whole point home. It shows you the real human cost. For so long, if you weren't included in that official count, you were denied basic freedoms. The struggle to be measured really is the struggle for equality itself. Okay, so this idea of a societal ledger, it actually has a direct parallel in the world of business. So for section 3, let's look at the business scorecard. Because just like a country, every single business runs on a system of measurement that tells it if it's winning or losing. And what's interesting is, even inside one company, there isn't just one scorecard. You've got financial accounting, which is all about looking backward. It's for outsiders like investors so they can judge how the company did. But then you have managerial accounting, which is all about looking forward. It gives the managers inside the company the data they need to make decisions about the future. Different audiences, different goals, different measurements. So what's the most basic, most fundamental measurement on the business scorecard? It's got to be the break-even point. This isn't about profit or getting rich. This is purely about survival. It's that magic moment when the money coming in is finally enough to cover all your costs. Before you hit this number, you are literally losing money. Let's make this super real for a second. Imagine a hair salon. Okay, they've got about $3,000 in fixed costs every month. Rent, utilities, that kind of stuff. And let's say they make $15 of profit on every single haircut. Well, their scorecard is dead simple. They have to do 200 haircuts a month just to keep the lights on. Every haircut is just a little tick mark on the road to survival. But things are changing. The modern business scorecard is evolving. That old school focus on just profit is being challenged by this idea called the triple bottom line. And the argument is that a truly successful company needs to measure 3 things. Profit, obviously, but also its impact on people, its employees, its customers, the whole community, and its impact on the planet, so taking into account environmental sustainability. The very definition of what makes a business successful is getting bigger. All right, let's shift gears now from the boardroom to our personal lives, specifically our online social world.
Because here, too, there is a super powerful and constantly changing system of measurement that totally shapes how we act.
I mean, if you think back to the early days of the internet, the value of being in an online community was just the community itself. It was about the quality of the chat. But as you can see on this timeline, as these platforms turned into huge businesses, the scorecard changed completely. The value went from connection to collection. First, it was measured by how many friends you had. Then it became about things you could count, like likes. And today? Well, our social lives are measured, monetized, and driven by these incredibly complex algorithms that just want us to keep scrolling.
So here's the bottom line. What we measured changed, and so our behavior changed with it. We went from valuing deep, quality connections to valuing just sheer quantity of engagement. Every like, every share, every comment is now a data point on this new social scorecard that the platforms are built to maximize. So what happens when these different scorecards, the societal one, the business one, and the personal one, just don't line up? Well, you get a collision of values. And there is no better example of this than the insane cost of college.
And this quote it just captures the problem for so many people. This dream of getting a higher education is slipping away, not because people aren't ambitious, but because the numbers on all these different scorecards just do not add up.
And this right here perfectly illustrates the conflict. You see, on our societal ledger, we say we value education as a public good. It's vital. But universities, they have to run on a business scorecard. They've got to break even, right? And then for the student, the value is totally personal. It's a dream for a better future. These three systems are measuring completely different things, and they are in direct conflict with each other.
And this collision creates a very real, very measurable problem. As you can see on this chart, there's this massive gap growing between what college actually costs and what students are even allowed to borrow in federal loans. The societal goal, accessible education, is just slamming into financial reality.
And what's the consequence of that? Exclusion. It's the same story all over again. Just like with civil rights, when the measurements don't account for you, you get left behind. This gap on the scorecard is effectively locking millions of people out of huge opportunities, and it just makes inequality worse. So all of this brings us to our final and maybe most important question. We've seen how these scorecards shape our society, our businesses, our entire social lives. But are we sure we're using the right ones? We are living in an age where we are drowning in data. We can measure pretty much anything and everything. But the real power isn't in the ability to measure. It's in the choice of what to measure. Because as we've seen again and again, what gets measured gets valued. So the question I really want to leave you with is this. In your own life, in your work, in your community, are you measuring what truly matters?